Good morning, everyone. Glad to see at least some people in the room this early. I was doubting if I would make it myself. Working in large organizations often leads to some degree of frustration at some point in time. As a developer, you might sometimes get weird constraints based on some policy or regulations or whatnot. And often these policies maybe be out of date, so we maybe need to update them. And that at least been my experience working. And I will talk a little bit about that and how to mitigate some of it. So now know what we are looking at here. This is a pretty old picture of the Ohio State University. And what you see in this picture here is like they have made this beautiful park, have these trees where you should walk on the path or around. But then you also see all this desire path in the middle of the park. And desire paths are all around us. If you start having a name on it, you will start noticing them everywhere in nature. But they also are around us in our organization. All the time we have a hierarchical organization, but you often skip one level to talk to your superior boss or whatever. And we also do things in code. We are supposed to do something, but then we maybe do something else. I'm not saying that's a good or bad thing, but that will happen as nature. But what they did in the Ohio State University is they did something about it. They, instead of like putting up border and fences, say, okay, you can't walk here in the park, they made the desire path the path you want to take. Because most of the time when we do take a shortcut or whatever, we don't do that to be mean or try to disrupt the system. We do that because we think there's a faster way to get from A to B. And that's what we see here as well. Like they found much faster way to get from building A to B all the time. And I think that's something we should try to do all the time when working with software. And when we see someone trying to take a shortcut in the system or whatever, see, why do we do that? And try to make that desired path, if it's a better option, make that the preferable path. And I hope this talk can go and give some inspiration how you can go about solving some desired path things out there in organization with using Pulumi, an automation tool, and creating sort of a self-service application that we have done for creating infrastructure. So don't have people go on and or either give them crazy amount of freedom or freedom they should have, but not crazy amount of access to all the system, but we should still have some freedom. So I will talk about first what is the problem I wanted to solve when I started doing this internally. And everything here is based on the work we've done at Elkjøp Nordic. Started doing it for maybe 2.5 years ago. And we'll see how much I have time to get into some of the maybe recommendations or pitfalls. That if you have any question on that, you can ask me afterwards. And I will show at least one solution, hopefully. And I also cover what is Pulumi and Pulumi automation, especially, and also some demo where we'll cover some of the basic stuff and build up to show how we can build a self-serve API at least, and then also show a small web application I created for demo purposes that you can have access to. So first, my name is Tomas. I am from Sweden, but been living in Norway the last 14 years. So my language is what it is. I try to make myself understood in both Swedish and Norwegian. I make it sometimes. I work at Elkjøp, as I said, as a principal software engineer. Basically meaning I do everything from infrastructure to front end. Yeah. I have been quite active in the community in Norway earlier, before I got kids. But then I transitioned to work kid sleep instead of work code sleep. Or you can probably cut sleep in both those terms. I like delivering value. That's also why I think this topic is quite interesting, because it's not about me delivering value, it's hopefully helping other teams to deliver value. And I also try to embrace or try to live by the motto that you have to change to improve. And that's something that can be sort of annoying in some organizations. Like everyone wants to improve, and then you ask, do you want to change? And everyone stays silent, basically. Because you need to have some kind of change to improve. That's how easy it is. So, what's the problem? In a large organization, you will, over time, at least today with all the microservices, bus, etc., hopefully that might be less of them with time, but you will have more and more services, more projects going on, etc., and have lots of different environments. And how do you start managing them? That is a complex topic. And there will also be maybe some audit requirements over time, some compliancy document that you need to follow, etc. And we want to, of course, solve these things, we should, but we don't want to have like too much control because that will slow us down. So I see this as two opposing forces to working towards each other. Yeah, like one end, like the creativity and innovation space, and then you have like security and governance. I'm definitely more towards the creativity and innovation, in my opinion. But I do understand and acknowledge that both of these two are important. We have to consider those. So I try to use my creativity and innovation to sort of solve the other side. And if you have like too much creativity and innovation, this is basically what you will end up with. You will have chaos and basically no governance. It might seem like a really good start, things go really fast, but then over time you have accumulated a complete mess, and that will basically also mean that your innovation will go much slower because you can't do anything. Like, where do you do a change in that system? I'm really amazed that he's actually climbing up there and doing things. But on the other hand, you have too much control and governance that are sort of manual, it's not automated, that will lead to a lot of waste. You'll have like people you need to wait to get approvals, and that could be spent on other things, and also that the time that they need to spend to make sure that something is working is also unnecessary. And this will also lead to, in my opinion, less innovation and less engagement. And less engagement is a scary topic because that will, over time, lead to people leaving for other jobs over time. I like this quote by Bjarte Buksnes. Hard to read the link, I see, but control is expensive, trust is free. Basically what he means there is we should establish more and more trust in our organizations because most people at work want to do good. And we want to give them the tools to do that. And establishing control is quite expensive. And like, I'm not saying that this self-service thing is not expensive. It's also quite expensive to do, but hopefully it enables developers to do whatever or have more freedom, and then we can trust them to do their thing in their space. And what is the solution? I think we need to have something that's self-service, as the title of the talk said, much like a vending machine. Someone should be able to go there and push a button. We don't have to pay in our self-service application, you just push the button. And it should be easy to use, much like the vending machine as well. And you shouldn't have to wait, not a long time at least. Like in a cloud era where we live, spinning up an environment takes a couple of minutes. So we should not have to wait. So it should be self-service and easy to use and on demand. At the same time, what we want to create is something I like to think of as a walled garden. Like the environment, the things we are giving to the developers should be their own garden. And what I mean with that is they should have the freedom to do whatever they want to do in their garden. If they want to grow oranges, that's fine. And if the neighbor wants to grow apples, that's also fine. But as long as they don't have access to all the other gardens and can ruin them, it's perfectly fine. So here we have sort of a lot of freedom within their own gardens, but outside there will be much less freedom. And I think that's a pretty good thing. So this sort of summarizes what I think, or what I had in mind when I started building the system that we are using today. Something self-service, on demand, easy to use, said. Should have this walled garden, and you should have 100% control and no access to other gardens. Of course, like there are always exceptions to all this, but we should strive towards these things as much as possible. And Pulumi was our sort of, like that was sort of conceptually what I think we should do. Pulumi was the tool we chose to do that. And Pulumi is still relatively new, even though it's been around for, I don't know, 6 years maybe or something, 7, I'm not sure. But let's talk a little bit about Pulumi because it might be new to someone. This was from like the early days on their own page. It's modern infrastructure as code. I talked about this yesterday. Yeah, you can use your own programming language and tools. I think that's the main killer feature in my opinion. Meaning you can use like they have SDKs for Java.NET, Node or JavaScript and TypeScript, which I use most of the time for this, and Python and Go, etc. So there are a lot of different languages, and you can use your tools, meaning VS Code, which editor you want to use, GitHub or Git for versioning and pull requests, etc. But it's more than code, especially when we talk about automation. Then it's software. You're actually writing software that people can interact with, and then that sort of will generate your infrastructure and things. So I think code is the wrong term for Pulumi. Most other players are only sort of code because you are sort of declaratively stating exactly what to do in a YAML file or whatever. But with Pulumi, I think it's slightly different. So let's talk about some of the concepts with Pulumi. You often start, this is the baseline when you're not doing automation like regular Pulumi. Or automation as you're using these bits as well. But it's good to have a good understanding of the basis first. You have a Pulumi project, and that's where you put your Pulumi program, and your program is for defining sort of your different resources, etc. And a resource can be almost anything. It can be a password, it can be a Kubernetes cluster, it can be a network, DNS, whatever. So, it could be a GUID. Sounds super exciting to have a GUID as a resource, but there are good reasons for it. And you connect these things with inputs and outputs. And I think it's really good to understand what the inputs and outputs are in the context of Pulumi. The inputs is, of course, what sort of defines your resource and how that should act and behave. Outputs, it's sort of properties that are available on a specific resource. Those two things are sort of wrapped in Pulumi. Like an output from take a resource group in Azure, and you have the name. It's not a string. It's an output of a string. And the reason for that is we don't know the value of those things at compile time. We know it will be a string, but we don't know that actual value. So all these outputs from different resources can be thought of as, if you know Java or JavaScript or TypeScript, or as a promise, is a value in the future, and they need to be resolved runtime. And these inputs and output types, which are sort of generic type over all the values, can also carry more information. So Pulumi uses them to sort of build this dependency graph of the resources that you want to create. So you make sure you don't have like circular dependencies between your resources, etc. So you get this nice dependency graph. Then it knows in which order it should provision things. So like the order of things of the way you're defining resources doesn't really matter when it comes to when Pulumi is going to provision something. The order that matters is like the dependency graph of the resources. And they can also carry things like if it is a secret or not, that can also be wrapped into this inputs and outputs. And we can also have stacks. And stacks can be thought of as different versions of a Pulumi program. It has both the configuration for that specific run of the application, and it also has the outputs from the run of one application. And stacks, as an example here, we have dev, test, and prod. When working with automation, you will see I have completely different things. You can have stacks for like each developer in the team. You can also have stacks for like pull request environments, which we have also at Elkjøp for another project, or for our core main site, we're creating a new environment for each pull request, and then when the pull request closes, we tear down the pull request environment. So and you use that, you leverage that by using stacks. And then what's Pulumi automation? Like with just the baseline of Pulumi, you can probably achieve something with Pulumi, but the Pulumi has been nice enough to create actually an API and SDK for doing these automated. And it is a programmatic interface for running Pulumi programs without having to use the command line interface. That's basically what it says on the documentation. And look at the workflow. This is how it looks like. The standard workflow to my right, your left, where you interact with the CLI, either on a CI/CD server or directly on your machine, and that kicks off the Pulumi CLI, which creates resources. With the automation API, you get a lot more options. You create a program which can be a web service, can be a CLI tool that you use to distribute to your team, or it can be your own sort of operations workflow. I won't cover. I will cover the, of course, automation. As I said, I won't go into depth in all the different services on Pulumi because this is not a talk about all the different services that Pulumi have, because it has sort of other deployment services, has this web that you will see, but I won't cover those in detail. I will focus more on like what the Pulumi open source tool can do for you, because it is open source and you can start using it for free. You can also use the Pulumi service for free as you do, just as long as you only have one project, I think, or something like that. But I do recommend like using the Pulumi service as well, because it helps with a lot of things and give you a lot of more opportunities. So I think that was enough talking, and instead like sort of going talking and good to try to show, because too much time, and I think people want to see how things can work. So let's do this. I will just, this is old, and I have some rehearsal, so I can move everything. This is a empty folder. I have prepared it with some snippets to make it easier for me, but let's create a new Øredev demo. So the goal here is to build up and build an API that I can call to generate resources and show how easy that can be. And then I will also show a more complex application. But first, let's cover some basic. If you're building an application or a standard, Pulumi is two different things. But it's always, I think, it's good to maybe start from a Pulumi project and then create or make that an actual application. So I always start with using a Pulumi new to create a project. And here if I enter, you need to, of course, install the Pulumi CLI. Then you get like 200 different templates to choose from. Would have different like language and different things, etc. And you can start seeing, I would like to use TypeScript, and there are a bunch of TypeScript things. I know I want to use the plain with no helps TypeScript version, so I just create the Pulumi TypeScript, and now I need to have a name for this. Let's call it automation, and create my first stack. When I then like turn this into automation project, the stack and the project name is not important anymore, because then it's going to be an application, and the application will actually generate the stacks and the project for me. But it's good here for showing how it works. And the standard application comes with a Pulumi YAML file, which will define that this is the project. Here we see the name of it and also which runtime we're using. And then you have the actual program. And even like the CLI says that this is a finished program, so I can run Pulumi up. Can you see the text, by the way? Good enough? Good. So this is a valid program. So I can do a Pulumi up, and it will start creating something. And you can go to, or I can go to this URL and see what's happening. Not to show that now or later. And when the CLI, you have the option to see what are the changes are going to happen. I will only create a stack, which is a resource by itself. And let's do that. So you can always like have a preview phase if you want to in your workflow to make sure that we're not doing anything stupid. And you can also bypass that all by putting a Pulumi -y. So now I actually created my first program and deploy that. Not super super interesting, but I can see what's in this stack, and I only have one stack basically. And let's add some initial dependencies, because if we want to have it as an application and not a standard one later on, it is good to sort of install a couple of things. First, the things, or the package I'm going to use, which is Azure Native, which gives me access to Azure, of course. Pulumi should be already installed, and I also want to install TypeScript. TypeScript is already here, but I don't think it was a dependency. It says it used as a file, but I want to have the TypeScript dependency as well, because I want to run this as an application. Because when the way Pulumi works, it is actually Pulumi that runs my application when I use a standard Pulumi setup. But now I want to take control, so I need to install it and make this an actual application. This tsconfig is not perfect fit, so I will just generate a new tsconfig, which is basically the config for this TypeScript program, and just create the outdir to be bin. So this is just to prepare for later. So that's all I need to sort of bootstrap the program. But before going to the automation bits, let's create a resource group just to show how it can be done. Azure Native, cons resource group. I know this will complain about having not specified the location, because every resource group needs to be in a location in Azure. I can set that also as a configuration variable, which I can show later. And then to have outputs on something, you need to just export a variable. Like this is for standard TypeScript things. That's how you sort of expose things. And if I now do a Pulumi app, let's do .y this first time. And again, hopefully, I'm doing this towards the Pulumi server, so sometimes it takes a little bit of time. But it was fast today, so that's good. And here you can see the changes have happened. And if you look at this, you might be a little bit confused, because I specify that the resource group name should be RG, and here it says something like RG836AAF0A. But okay, let's live with that and see what happens. That was not what I specified. We can also follow along on this link here. See. Now I see the Pulumi service. You can actually do like running Pulumi towards your local machine if you want to as well, or you can set up your own Azure storage for storing the state. I use the Pulumi service because I think it's convenient for me if it loads. So here you can see the last run we had. I can see sort of the output. It does actually say that this is the resource group name. But here it says RG only. So what we need to differentiate between is the name that we have in the world of Pulumi. So when we identify this in Pulumi, it is RG. But Pulumi is actually adding this suffix, and we can see that that is the suffix that we have. I think you need to change to use the right account. And here you see also that the name is exactly RGA blah blah blah. And it is for good reasons. One is to avoid conflicts, because if you have this suffix, you will have less likelihood of having conflicts. And it's also good when you can maybe update things. You want to provision something first up and then take the other things down. So there are many good reasons why they have done this as a default. But there are also ways to override it. So if I really want to, I can do a resource group name, sure. And now it's starting. It first do also, as I had a preview, and we can also see the preview live if you want to. And now we will have a completely new one. I don't have time to. I don't think I have time to cover sort of secret management and configuration management. I talked about that yesterday, but it's an excellent tool for configuration management. You can just set the variable and then use it either as a secret or not a secret. But what I want to show, one thing that's I think is very important in working automation is how to connect different stacks with each other. So now I have these things in my dev stack. Let's create another stack in the same project. So let's call it test. So I do that with a Pulumi stack init test. So now I have created my complete new project. I know I can't use the same name here because that's going to lead to a conflict. So in this stack, I will just, and this could be a completely different project as well. Like you can cross-jump between projects and not only between stacks in the same project. So let's get access of. I actually have a shortcut for it, I think. PA3 maybe. 2. Yeah. So, and it should be then automation, because that's what I call it. So this is how I get access to that other stack. And here I said it's going to be the dev stack. And I have then one output, which is a resource group name. So I can do const dev. And then I can get the resource group name, and I can actually, just for fun, do that and test. So if I do a Pulumi up now, I should get something like this. Is going to have the name. Did I call it Øredev or the demo something? I don't remember. But this is how you connect different stacks with each other. And I think that's super useful. Like you can have anything in those outputs for a stack. It can be secrets, it can be configuration, etc. So if you're building sort of a core infrastructure, that would be really, really convenient, because then you can access sort of database credentials or whatever. And even like in a, if you have a own project in your own sort of water garden, you can have a core infra there where you set up all the different sort of infrastructure pieces, and then you have a connection strings as output, which you can then access when you're sort of deploying your application. Okay, so I can't do that because it's too long, apparently. And maybe T. I think I have to hit the exact what? Ah, I think this is sort of require output. I wonder what's going on. Oh yeah, this is a good thing. If you remember before, I talked about input and outputs, right? This require output is actually giving me an output of any. I can say that this has to be a string. I think I can do that at least. No, it couldn't. I thought it could. But then the problem here now is, since this is an output, I can't just add t to it. So I need to do a .apply, and here I have the name and r plus t, and now this will actually resolve to a proper name. Because when I just adding t to the output, it will sort of get the whole type name plus t on the end. So could I made that mistake? Because then I showed you how actually output. And to get access then to output values, you need to use apply, which is much the same thing as promise in TypeScript, as I said. So hopefully this will work instead. And I think a little bit further, because it's thinking longer at least, so that's good. That's the worst part of dealing with infrastructure. Everything's taking time. You don't have control over how long time things take. Like sometimes take like 2 seconds to create a resource group, and sometimes like 1 minute. But it should come up. We can also look at while waiting, see what it's actually doing here. Most of the time, the same information. Yeah. But here you can follow along on deploy in both places. Could be hard to see maybe, but. Go on up. Okay, I will just skip this and like this will work. I'm quite sure. So instead of just standing and waiting and staring on the screen, just kill it and said pretend that we created a resource group. It would have finished at some point. And also, as I said, what Pulumi also gives you is the ability to clean up after yourself. So, and you do that using the Pulumi destroy command that will like delete all the resources in your stack. And I will pass -y to do it right away. And yeah, that's really handy if you are creating like ephemeral environments like we do for pull request environments, for example. And to remove the stack completely, you can do then stack rm. But you have to do that after you, of course, have deleted all the resources. Then you can do remove the stack, and then it should be deleted from the service as well. And of course, you need to do a confirmation. So that's stack select. Let's go back to our dev stack, and you're going to do a stack select. I'm not sure I'm going to use that anymore. I will start creating our automation because that's what we're here for, right? I usually split out the automation tool in some other file than the index file. So I will create a program.ts file. And just to make things a little bit faster, I will create use my snippet here. This is the sort of baseline for an automation program in a way. I have created my own custom resources in Pulumi, so I need to extend for this component resource, which would make it easier for me to, so instead of like every single time create, let's say you create a website, you need to do a bunch of things. If you have a standardized way to do that in your organization, you can wrap that in your own components. You just need to provide that, give it a name, and then you like spin up all the different default components for you automatically. And you can do that in a custom resource. But in this case, it will only be a resource group just to show that it works. And here I have like one of the magic bits. I define my program. This is basically like the inner bits of this. That's basically what I would have in my index file in a regular standard Pulumi program when you're doing it from the CLI. So this is the sort of the core bits. Then I'm just having a helper function, which I called up in this case to reflect the Pulumi up. And to run this program programmatically, I first need to have a stack. So I create it or select it, and then and here I give it a name for product name, which is automation. And the stack name is also the input, and then I just create a stack up. And to use this, I need to go back to my index file. I think it was px, and this is first time it's going to be just a CLI version, just to show we can do both. And to execute this as CLI, we need to do a scripts tag here, and then PA7. And it should be colon. And now I should be able to do a npm run start demo hello. And this will now go on and execute this CLI command, which will call the up thing. So now I basically have a CLI. In theory, if I package it, I can distribute it to all my team, and they can create resource groups like the same way in a homogenic way, which I think is a good thing. This is sort of like having this desired path, making them sort of the preferable path. So if you know something, we can sort of package up. So now I've created a new resource group called hello blah blah. And to speed things up a little bit, I'm going to create the whole, make this an API as I told you, And I want to do two things. I want to create resource group, list the different things I have, and also to do deletions. So let's add a couple more things here. We have the PA. I think it's sort of, is it, I think it's 9 or, no, 8. Come on. PA. Why won't it play along? Restarting a TypeScript server is always the solution to all the issues. PA. And here I have a bunch of tickets, so create one index. Where is it? This is not it. Looks like my snippets have disappeared. That's sort of annoying. Oh, it's PA11. So this is how I do a listing of packages. Again, I need to sort of, I'm only creating the workspace, and then I can create a workspace is sort of my reference to the project, and then I can list all the stacks in that project. So this is a simple one to do that. And then I have, I think it's PA 13, 14 it was. And this is how I actually do a destroy. And destroy is a little bit more interesting. You first need to create a selected stack, of course. And then you need to do destroy, as I showed you before, with the CLI. But you also have to remember to remove the stack from the workspace, which is the stack RM. And to use this here, we need to do a PA 9, which will create this as a API route instead. And we need to install the Fastify, which is just a API for or SDK for creating APIs in Node. And let's add the two different routes here, PA 12, I think, and PA 15. And we also need to import these two things from this. So now I have created my actual API. I have a route to get and create, and then also to delete a specific stack. And npm run start to create the application. And let's add some sample requests http PA10, PA13, PA16. And here I have a sample request to actually do things. Let's try to create one. And hopefully it is doing something. Yeah. So now I created some name or resource group. I can list my existing stacks. And you can also see I have my demo one because I did that in the same project name. I have the dev and I have the some stack. And I can also delete the resource. So this is basically what it is to create a complete stack. I'm not going to have time to go into full detail of creating a proper web application. I will just show you that I have one that you can use, and I can give you the source code to it because it is available on GitHub. It looks like this is an error, but it's actually okay. It says okay up here, so trust the word. And if I do a list here now, you can see that the some stack is moved. So this is a full example of how to use automation. But as I said, I will quickly show what you can do with these things. So here I have like a Pulumi automation demo. If this would have been a 1 hour talk, I would be able to go through this in more detail as well. Oops. So with some creativity, you can actually start creating a pretty nice application. And this is exactly what we have done internally at Elkjøp. So we have a web application that looks not like this because I created this from scratch because it was fun to do a nicer one. And here you have different resource group. And what I do here, why I have two different things here, is like when you're creating a repository, I actually connect that to a resource group, and then I can inject the credentials to access the resource group as a GitHub secret in the repository, which means that I have access when I'm running a GitHub action from that repository. I can have access to that other resource group. But let's see that time is running out, so I don't have time to go through this in detail. But know that this example is out there, and just ask me if you want to see more of the code. I can gladly show you. There will be a link in the end of the presentation as well. So let's head over to that slide. Demo sort of worked, it didn't blow up. I didn't have enough time to finish everything, but at least you show how to get started with the automation tool. And here you have the link to that web application in the bottom there, if you want to. And I think that was all. Any questions? Yeah. Yeah, I covered that some part yesterday in another talk. I have nothing against Terraform at all. Pulumi for me works better because it's code. I can relate much more to that than YAML files. If you're choosing between the two when you choose Terraform, I think you still make a solid choice, I would say. But I still think you have more opportunities with Pulumi since you have programming as a first-class citizen and not as an afterthought. And also, I would be a little bit worried around the recent licensing changes in Terraform. I don't know the details there, but I know there was an uproar on the internet when they changed the license. And I would not be too worried about arguments like Terraform has this many more providers, because how many providers do you actually need? You probably need like the main cloud vendors, and Pulumi has great access, like great coverage there. Take like the Azure native package, for example. It's automatically generated based on the ARM API specification. So as soon as there's a change in the ARM API, there will be a Pulumi version out like within a day, and it has almost 100% coverage. And then it has a lot of other different providers as well, like the GitHub provider that we use. I think we're using like Azure AD, and GitHub, and maybe one or two more. And it's not like too complicated to make your own wrapper if you want to for some other resource. But we haven't needed to do that yet. Any other questions? Then I say thank you.